back to Saturday. Good job of finding a way to win. That game could have went either way. They played extremely well, extremely hard, and easily could have won the game. So, a very competitive game. We had thought, it was going to be a 12-round type of game because of the way they run the ball, how physical they are on defense, and it was. And luckily, we won the last round. So, a lot of work to do. Didn't run the ball very well in the game, with no consistency, and obviously didn't stop the run or play well on defense until later in the game. We got a couple stops. So, a lot of work to do. Number one team in the country coming in my opinion, and the premier program in the country. No offense to Clemson. Those are the two premier programs that are operating the highest level over the last, 10 years, and this one's doing it in the SEC, so it's a little bit harder. So we'll have our hands full. I think that, this is probably the best team coaches had as far as being balanced all over and not having holes anywhere. And, they play at a really high level on offense, really good on special teams, great returner, and, playing really good defense. So, I think the last 3 years, I think the average score in this match has been something like 62-13 or 14 or something. So, we got a great challenge on our hands.
David starts off.
Lane, I'll ask the obligatory Lane Kiffin, Nick Saban question. It's obviously going to be a national storyline all week. Just your thoughts of facing a coach you know so well and one that knows you so well.
Yeah, I think that's a storyline, but I don't think that's really, I know everybody downplays those things. I don't think that's really that big a deal. We worked together for 3 years, learned a lot from him, had a great run. I think we'd won 24, 26 straight games when that was over there. So very productive times with a lot of great players and a lot of wins. The only 2 regular season losses were to Ole Miss. So good time, and obviously very grateful to him.
Parrish, go ahead.
Lane, how do you think Coach Saban's teams are different from the time you were there?
I don't think they're a lot different. I think that change had started. I think, I was thinking of playing him at Tennessee versus playing him now, whatever that is, 11 years later or something. There's so much more dynamic on offense when, how they play and pushing the ball downfield. We played them, they had Julio Jones, Mark Ingram, Trent Richardson, great offensive line, McElroy, all that. But it was a different offense. It was more of a grinded out, slow, and people could keep scores closer. Now they just kind of blow everybody out, because it's a totally different style of offense, whatever that's been the last really 6 years.
You mentioned your run game at Kentucky. Obviously, they were physical on the defensive line. What else kept you guys from being more successful in the run game?
Well, they were really physical, a couple really good backs, and the quarterback's a really good quarterback and an elite runner. So, you don't get off blocks and don't play with good leverage up front, it makes for, a record-breaking day like that. So, we got a challenge here. I'm sure that they're going to want to run the ball after seeing that film, even though they're becoming a pass-first team now, which I didn't think anybody ever say in a Saban era, but they are. So I would expect them, to want to try to get the running game going this week.
How would you assess your offensive line going into this game?
Very up and down. I think the center and the tackles, have played well at times. We've struggled at guard, and so we're going to have to play a lot better. Not just this week, but the rest of the schedule. It's all SEC schedule, and you can't just play defense like we have been and just rely that the quarterback and 2 receivers and tight end are going to bail us out. So we got to play better defense. We got to run the ball better.
We'll go to Nick.
Lane, you talked about these Alabama teams being a little more pass-first than some people are used to. It seems like since you started at Alabama, a lot of SEC teams have embraced that. Do you think that what you and Coach Saban were able to do on those teams kind of shifted SEC offensive philosophy and enabled the league to be a little bit more pass-first?
I don't know. I wouldn't necessarily say that. Because we weren't necessarily at times, depending on the year, they're more pass first than ever now, the last 2 years, especially last year with Tua. But, we were balanced. I mean, the second year, Derrick Henry set the record for most rushes in the history of the SEC. It still stands. So I think that they've changed more than we had at that point.
I assume the answer is not often now that you're back in the SEC, but when you were at Florida Atlantic, did you stay in touch with Coach Saban much with looking for nuggets of wisdom, or did that relationship kind of end after you left Alabama?
Yeah, that's not really his wheelhouse. Not really, sending out some texts every once in a while, just checking on you. So, no.
Go to Nate.
Coach, just briefly, what can you do to get Jerry on more involved, kind of just more explosive in the offense?
Block better. It's hard to run when they're not big holes. So we got to block better, and if we were running more efficient, we'd run them more. We don't. I think if you follow over the years, we do what works. And so, when we're throwing the ball really well, we throw more, and we would like to run more, but we got to be more efficient.
Go ahead, Neil.
Hey, Lane, I wanted to ask you about both of the quarterbacks in this game. Obviously, Mac Jones had to wait his turn there in Tuscaloosa, but what have you seen out of him late last season and then this season that's made him so effective?
Well, we were there when we recruited Mac, and I always thought the cool thing about Mac was everybody said, okay, well, why would you go there to, and he didn't care. He was very competitive, really confident in himself, awesome family, and so I'm glad he's doing well. I mean, who would have thought these two quarterbacks are first and second, in the country in quarterback efficiency. So happy he's doing really well.
And then about Matt, you mentioned after the game Saturday that he really improved from game 1 to game 2. What's the next step in progression for him? What are you looking for him to make that next step?
Just calming down and cleaning up his feet in the pocket. He's kind of moving around a lot, making a lot of plays, but at the same time, there's times he can stay in there and set himself a little more.
We'll go to John from WCBI.
Hey Lane, I just started at WCBI. I just figured I'd also introduce myself. I'm the sports director there, so I'll be covering them. Look forward to working with you. But
All right, John.
You mentioned that looking to clean a few things up after obviously Saturday. What specifically, defensively, have you all been working on to sharpen after that game?
Oh, pad leverage up front, playing too high, and tackling. A lot of missed tackles. So those two things don't. If you don't do those two things, you're not going to stop the run. So obviously that's our emphasis.
And then obviously, the Saban deal, we've talked about it a couple times here, but what does your experience with him, how does that kind of play a role in this game? Since you worked with him for a couple of years, is that kind of an advantage for you, or does it really not make much of a difference?
Well, all these people that say it's an advantage because I worked with him, and so I don't really understand that because he's 20-0 against coaches that worked for him. So if you working for him gives you an advantage, that's you're not a very good gambler then, if that's what you say, because 20-0 is a pretty strong record.
We'll go back to Parrish.
Man, you just hit on that. I wanted to ask you about Nick's record against his former assistants. What did you take from that? He's obviously put some very strong assistants into the head coaching field.
Well, I kind of make of it, he knows them too. Everybody says, well, they know him. He knows the assistants, So I think it goes both ways. And really, except for Ole Miss, really, those 2 times and a few, Iron Bowls, he's kind of 100% against everybody else, really, until you get to Clemson in the playoffs. So, he's 100% against a lot of coaches and schools.
You guys, I think, was Matt under center on that last play? He was when he threw the touchdown to Elijah in overtime?
Yes.
Haven't seen that much in this offense at all. What situations, circumstances do you like the quarterback under center there?
Well, that was a goal line situation where we're gonna sprint out. So it's just a play we've had over the years. Ran I think, last USC at Oregon, when we beat Oregon, which put Alabama in the playoffs, by the way. Ran it twice in that game, so just a play that we have for a situation like that.
Go ahead, Nick.
You kind of touched on this earlier, but 66 points, 62 points, 59 points the last 3 times Ole Miss played Alabama. What do you say to the defense to kind of reverse that mentality and make them believe they can limit them a little better than they have the last couple of years?
Well, that's a great question. Every year is new, every year is different, but we got to play better. Got to limit explosive plays, keep the ball in front of us. Because now they got another receiver I'd never even heard of that just went for 150 that runs by everybody. So I thought there were 2, now there's 3. So we got to find a way because no one else is finding a way for a while.
You talked about just those receivers. What kind of a matchup is it for the secondary this week? They were kind of exposed against Florida. Do you think they improved at all against Kentucky, or is it still going to be kind of trial by fire this week?
No, I mean, you got to mix things up and play different coverages, and not just all these guys have great players. They got a great offensive coordinator. That again, like I said, this is a different world than 11 years ago. When you used to go play them, you knew they were going to be in the I formation, and you'd be able to keep the games close, and they'd pound it out, and now they don't do that at all. So this is a lot harder to play. That's why Coach changed 6, 7 years ago. Why he wanted to change, because he saw the need to change and to spread things out and become an RPO team and push the ball downfield more. And so I was glad he changed at the time. I'm not really glad he changed now. I wish they were doing what they used to do.
Go ahead, Nate.
Back to the defense, would it be easier if it were a single thing that was going wrong? Because, 2 weeks ago it's the 400 yards to Trask, and last week it's 400 on the ground. Does it kind of make it even more challenging that it's not one thing that you can pinpoint?
Definitely. I mean, you'd obviously have it be one thing so you could work on it, but you have one game that's, passing like that, next game's rushing like that, just means you got a lot to work on. And I don't know statistically around the country if other people have this issue, but I think, it certainly doesn't help a new staff missing spring ball and spring game and, the limited amount of tackling that comes with that.
Go ahead, David.
Yeah, Lane, what is it like having to deal with, or perhaps even temper, the frustration level of, 2 games in, having one of the most productive offenses in the nation and having a defense that's near the bottom in every statistical category?
Yeah, not what you used to in the SEC. Is what it is. Here for a reason, and you don't walk in and everything's perfect. So when you come into a job, there's usually things that you got to get fixed and got to work on, and sometimes can't happen overnight. There's no pixie dust.
We'll go to Ben.
Yeah, Lane, what's the status of Mark Britt and John Haynes, and also have you heard anything about Otis?
I have not heard anything about Otis. We obviously would be awesome to have him. When we thought we were going to get him, throughout all of camp and everything, we thought that we would, and so he was definitely starting for us, and so and the other 2 guys, that their health is fine.
Go ahead, David.
Lane, just along those lines, we know Dante Evans, the linebacker, left the team for some personal leave a few weeks back. Has he returned, and what is his status?
He is not. He opted out. So it is what it is. I mean, I don't know how Alabama did this. It's amazing. Coach did a great job of somehow keeping these guys happy and, not feeling that they needed to get ready for the draft with all these first rounders. And so these guys around the country opting out, but none of the Alabama guys. So Coach must have had a great plan.